Hello and welcome on Watches TV, and today we're going for a rather long interview session with Mr. Xavier de Roquemaurel, one of the co-initiator of the relaunch of the Czapek name in watchmaking, how it came into being in terms of its shareholding structure, very original, and the impact this has on the governance of the company. We'll obviously talk on the initial products and their evolution, the distribution, and also what they've learned through this process, the do's and don't do's, and it's very interesting on the entrepreneurial point of view. Let's go enjoy. We are at La Chaux-de-Fonds with Mr. Xavier de Roquemaurel, one of the co-founders of the relaunch of the Czapek brand. And it's been already 10 years. Time really flies.
And you don't change, Marc-André. You're always the same. Beautiful hair, beautiful look. The glasses are unique. Congrats. How can I do that? You're the Dorian Gray of watchmaking.
It's just magic, I guess. Yeah. That's nice to hear. So let's go back indeed over the last 10 years. And on the inception of the brand, because there was really something rather singular in the way you set up the company. And can you please remind us what made it also quite special?
Yeah, it's a combination of facts. People sometimes look back and they think, oh, they were great of thinking that or doing that at that moment. But it's also the constraint that you have that make you become better or make you take that route rather than another one. And when we were together, Harry, Sébastien, and myself, we have no funds. We had no money, so we needed to start somewhere. And we were just old enough, Harry and I were 45, Sébastien was more 35 or 37. And yes, we knew already, and we all knew that the utopia of finding an investor that was at the same time wealthy, had goodwill, and wanted to let us work on the project without intervening too much according to his own ego or his own taste, we knew that was impossible. Mm-hmm. We knew that was a real utopia. And so we thought, okay, and on top of that, we might not find that billionaire, the other theoretical billionaire that falls from the sky. No. We were more more the feet on the ground. Mm-hmm. And we decided to look for other people like us. And the idea was there is probably thousands of people who would have the same dream as the one we have, which is to revive an incredible company, a beautiful brand that was forgotten for so many years. And that was the pitch at the beginning.
Yeah.
Then what happened is that the social media and internet had made possible to do crowdfunding equity. Mm-hmm. But crowdfunding equity was already existing 200 years ago in England. And people were going in the street and they were trying to sell shares of their company. So, or maybe not in the street then, it was maybe in salons and beautiful places, but that was the way. It was very open in the UK business framework. And so we kind of applied that recipe to modern times. We were not the first ones. There had been other brands doing that, but we've been the first one to do a worldwide crowdfunding equity campaign. Now, when I say worldwide, it's with guillemets, because we did it with 3 jurisdictions at the same time. And by doing it in 3 different jurisdictions, England, France, and Switzerland, we cover the legal needs of most of the jurisdictions worldwide. And because the company was set up in Switzerland, anyone from the US, from Australia, from Japan, from anywhere, could decide to join and become a shareholder. So it was a way to actually absorb all the different approaches.
Mm-hmm. And what was the promise at that stage?
It was a problem. The promise was a revival, really. The promise was the phoenix, Czapek was forgotten. I met 3 persons only that knew about Czapek. Now it's like Woodstock. Everybody thinks he recalls being there or having known it, but no, they didn't know it. Yeah. The people who knew most about Czapek were probably people purchasing pocket watches, because you could find some beautiful pocket watches on the auctions of the Grande Maison of auctions every season. Mm-hmm. But most of the people that were meeting, retailers, journalists, collectors, didn't know about Czapek. Yeah.
And when you started this crowdfunding equity campaign, did you know already exactly the product that you would introduce and present?
We knew that which product we wanted to do, and actually we tailored the way to launch Czapek according to the fact that we were doing a crowdfunding equity. Okay. Because even though we knew that normally you start aiming very high and then you go down to make a version of your product that is more affordable for a larger crowd, here we said we're going to do the opposite. And we're going to do a nice little watch, the Quai des Bergues, which was actually a bit larger then, a 7-day power reserve, manual wind, a classic but a must also in a collection of a watch collector. Mm-hmm. It's a must to have a 7-day power reserve, because we live on a 7-day rhythm. And this watch was more affordable. We launched it at less than 10,000 Swiss francs. Can you believe it? No, we were not making a lot of money on it. Actually, it was a joke among collectors to say I didn't negotiate my price because I thought that these poor guys would lose their shirts if I was asking for a discount. Thanks to them, to the first one who joined at that moment. It was very important also as an act of faith. Yeah. Huh? And we wanted to go gradually up. The idea was, with the first one, we'll have many of our shareholders buying it and become the ambassador of the brand. Mm-hmm. And this is what happened. Mm-hmm.
So how many shareholders were there initially?
So there has been 6 rounds, I think, in the total. Uh-huh. At the very beginning, we were just 25. It was friends, family, and fools. It was not official. It was a pre-round to finance the big round. From there, we jumped to 90 during the first large round of crowdfunding equity. But then there are phenomena that are very interesting, because you've got 3 months during which every week you tell everyone what you're doing, how high you've been, you've got a plateau, and then it starts again for the last 2-3 weeks. And we reached 1.1 million, which was incredible. We had the objective of 1 million. And I can tell you that after 2 months, when you have at 600,000, you feel like, I'm never going to reach the million. And now in the end, people get excited, but they're still thinking about it. Thinking so much that the day after the closure, you get emails of people saying, I wanted to join.
Too bad.
I didn't know you were closing. I'm like, come on, I wrote you 10 times. So you cannot say that. No, they were hesitating so much that of course, there is an aversion to risk, and of course, it's a very early stage to invest in a company. And not all investors want to invest at seed stage. Some want to invest startup, but later. Yeah. And so we did another round immediately after with the late guys, you know. So that was the 3rd round, and then we did a round a year later.
When was that?
That was 2016.
Okay.
So we did another round in 17, another in 18, and the last one in 19.
Okay.
And that in total brought an amount of about 5.5 million fundraise, and that was enough to cover the need of the company for the growth step by step.
Okay. Coming back on those first few years, how are you structured, and how are you working with your various suppliers? What was kind of the logic?
Very quickly, it became a partnership. And again, because we were crowdfunded, that decision shaped so many things, you know. Because we were transparent. Because you cannot have a new shareholder and not open the books. And so you used to being naked. When I was hiring new people, I was actually, for joke, but half joke, asking them if they were going to saunas and if they liked it to be naked in front of everyone. Because that's the reality of this company. This is a company where you walk naked all the time. Everybody knows the good things you're doing and everybody knows the mistake you're doing. And there is a rule of transparency, because that's another reason, but there is a tendency for human beings to hide the mistake they make, and that slows down an organization.
Yeah.
So to avoid this phenomena, we actually ask everyone to be fast on saying, I made a mistake, can you help me recover it? No, so that's a benefit also of this culture of transparency. And because we were transparent, naturally, our first partners, our first supplying partners, were collaborative. And we learned how to be collaborative. Naturally, people are not collaborative. Everybody knows what is collaboration on paper. But collaboration means you're going to be transparent with them and you're going to tell them what you have, what you can do, and what you cannot do, and where you made a mistake or where you did right. And this is a two-way relationship. And this brings you to the next level. And some ideas that we had, like the secret signature on the enamel dial, we would have never dared to ask for it. But it came from Claude-Éric Jean and Donze Cadran to actually say, hey, we could do that. Actually, from an idea of Sébastien who wanted to make a sentence for his father, a hidden sentence. And so we created the secret sentence. So it's like a ping-pong game where, because there is this relationship that is transparent, that is fast, and that is collaborative, everyone is invited to bring a new idea on the table.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the development of the product and the product lines, I mean, initially you had a few models, but now today you have really kind of a thorough and large collection. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of the big milestones into this product development?
So in the beginning, we wanted to do the 7-day power reserve, first the Quai des Bergues, then a chronograph, and then a tourbillon. That was our initial plan. And we thought later on, we'll do a minute repeater, which was for us the Graal. And we also were considering that we were relatively rookies, so that we needed to learn. And that by going from one level to more and more complex, then it was enabling us to be creative at every step. So we actually did nearly that plan, because we did the Quai des Bergues, and then we did the tourbillon Place Vendôme, which was the tourbillon. So number 3 became number 2, a little bit in advance, because of the meeting with Jean-François. And Jean-François actually gave us that input of going to a higher level and the possibility to do it with him. And Jean-François made us meet Antoine, and Antoine became the first designer for the company, and that blended. One thing caused another. Un clou chasse l'autre, we say in French. And that helped us build step by step, also with the beauty of the encounters. Also thanks to the outcome of welcoming a problem, because a problem means a solution that we will find and maybe an innovation. So that's a certain mindset that is the one that has led us. And in the way, quite early in 2016, I was already very strongly inputted to do something in the sport area. That was missing. That was actually crowded with a few models that were kind of shining and taking everything, but that there was a room for creativity. And that was, there was not only Gérald Ginta as a great designer, there was a space for other designers, no? And it took us some time until 2019, because we rolled the tourbillon and the chronograph after, the Faubourg de Cracovie. But then we effectively wanted to bring to people who love watches, who collect them, and who wear a watch that is more a discreet sport watch for the everyday, so that nobody can imagine what collection they have. Something that was more unique rare, that was handcrafted, hand polished, with englaze chamfering, all the bridges, an haute horlogerie approach to a sport watch. And this is the Antarctic, and the Antarctic came after that process, so of first maturing the idea, then launching it in 2019 as a project to develop, and in 2020 as a final watch. Now, I did put a lot of myself in that watch, also because I wanted to demonstrate. I like the word revenge, but not in a negative term, because sometimes you feel that nobody believes in you, and you want to demonstrate you can, and it's not necessarily bad, because it's a source of motivation, and I think we have it inside Czapek.
So the Antarctic for you represents some kind of a pivotal moment in the history of the brand.
Completely, a turning point. We were making 150 watches per year, and we jumped to 1,000. So you see that's the Antarctic. And today we make 850 Antarctic per year. We still make the 150 of the others, so it's really a plus. And we have not lost sales on the Quai des Bergues, which remains a beautiful piece and a must-have. It's more the Antarctic brought a whole complete new story.
Okay.
And I was also a bit frustrated, I will tell you. My oldest son is an engineer, so I'm nothing personal there, but I was really upset by the approach of the engineers on construction of movements. That with so narrow thinking. It was impossible to introduce beauty in an early stage. And what Daniel allowed me to do was to actually come in a very early stage and start playing with the construction to create beauty and to look into a different approach, which of course it's always a trade-off in watchmaking. So of course it had its own ups and downs of going this way, but it allowed us to create what we can find here, which is an incredible movement where there is an inspiration from the pocket watches of Czapek that we were buying every year or every 6 months. We have now a collection of 19, so it's nearly the time to create a small museum and to have something that was extremely modern in the approach and respectful of traditional watchmaking. So a mix of different elements. We took German silver, Maishor, because it was more resistant to torsion than brass. And we made very small bridges that you feel like, is it going to resist to a shock? And then we tested the shock live with videos, to see how much it was resisting. So we went through that process of saying, let's go to the max and check that we did right and correct everything that needs to be corrected. An incredible movement is not done in 1 year, in 2 years. It's done in 20 years of continuous improvements. And that's the story of the Valjoux movement, and that's the story of the Unitas movement, on which most watchmakers learned the job at the beginning and that are still used as a source for creating new movements by beautiful companies or beautiful watchmakers.
Yeah. Tell us also about the evolution of your distribution model.
So at the beginning, we started Baselworld, full of energy, thinking we're gonna...
I remember that.
You remember, that was crazy. We were in the old 2.2, it was closed after. It was the end of Baselworld, like the end of the labyrinth, And we were hoping to find 15 retailers and to sell 5 watches to each of them. And that was 75 watches. And with that, we were on the safe side. And we went out of Basel with 1 watch sold to 1 retailer for himself, actually. So that
kind of brings a bit of humility on the table.
Oh yeah, well, I don't know if it brings humility. It brings a lot of stress, but because humility we had it before. It's not you're confronted to so many difficulties that you you don't get your ego inflamed. And actually, the company is an anti-ego company. So whenever people start, they will tell, cool down, life is a pendulum. So you're here, you're there. Tomorrow you'll be there. And but the beauty of a startup is that you continuously reinvent yourself. So we said, okay, fine. It didn't work this way, let's go direct. And so we started the first modern subscription online in our website and to our shareholders. And so that's how we sold watches. In the end of the year, we had sold 88 watches. So from 1 to 88, it's a lot of work, one by one, and that was the beauty of reinventing our business model and adapting to the fact that retailers were actually waiting to see how fast we would die, as everyone else. They were visiting the crazy guys who were going to die in 2-3 years. Well, we did not die apparently. Well, actually, that's not so true for myself, but because of my accident 3 years ago. Yeah. But it was an incredible adventure, and the shareholders did represent an important number of watches sold. We launched a female model without finishing the design of it. Never do that. That's a lesson learned, because it's never the same when you finalize a watch. But that was a few more watches sold. And then we got Japan, who finally became our number one retailer. But that came later in the year, during the summer. And and some direct customers. And people, it was like a concierge website, no e-commerce yet, but you could, on the website, say, I would like to have that watch like that, can you change me the hands, and things like that. So very early, we were into the bespoke watch concept. Yeah. And our promise was, we make you the watch in 4 weeks, and we were keeping that promise, to actually make the watch in 4 weeks, because I was coming from the world of made-to-measure suits, and I found it interesting to keep the same time frame of 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. After the Antarctic, it became 4 months, 2 years, 2 years and a half, and now we are back to, depending on the models actually, it's going to be on average, I would say, 6 to 9 months wait to get a watch. Okay. So it's more acceptable.
Okay. Still talking about distribution, so now do you rely on many more retailers? How is that working?
Now we have about, I would say, 80 to 90% of our business done through retailers, and it's about 64 doors, I think, different doors. We aim at about maximum 80, I think, worldwide. Okay. We want partners. Yeah. And we want retailers not for 10 years, for 100 years. Because that's the essence of partnership. And because many of these companies are actually family companies, where you see the kids and you look at the kids and say, okay, that's the next generation is going to be cool, and they're going to develop that business. And this is something that we like a lot, to have the very intense and close relationship. And it was the same when I met Guido from Bucherer. We just sat together and we're just like, boom, like this, very simple, very direct. Yeah. This is a people business. Yeah. This is a human business.
Absolutely.
It's what makes it so addictive.
Absolutely.
Loving watches make you love people.
Yeah, very true. Well said. And in terms of market location, are you kind of evenly spread out, or how's that working?
So we are more and more evenly spread out, and we know that a crisis is always an opportunity that is hidden, that you have to look for. So what we have done last year, guess what? Open a subsidiary in China. So why China when everybody says it's crisis? Because there will be opportunities, of course. Why a subsidiary? Because we like control. And we like to be in our home when we go to a place that is a complex place. So we've got partners there and friends, but we keep the control a little bit. So we have that company there. That was our first move. Mm-hmm. So a certain strategy according also to a certain region. where we know that control is key, especially in China.
Yes, a wise move, probably. Now let's talk about your infrastructure and the evolution of how you're producing watches, because now here we're in a kind of more or less rather new building for you, which has expanded, so I hear, over the last few months. Tell us what have been also there the kind of the big milestones in terms of integrating a little bit more of the required competencies to be able to produce some of your watches, or at least the prototypes or things like that.
So the very beginning, you may remember, Sébastien had a nice flat inside La Chaux-de-Fonds, and he decided to dedicate a whole room to the atelier. And so it was a one-room atelier, as there is in so many places in the valley. And so many watchmakers dedicate one room in their home to watchmaking. And then we saw that we needed to structure it with the production. One thing is to make a few prototypes. Making a production is another story. So we were hosted in Le Locle, in the same building where Chronode was. So it was very easy for us in terms of proximity. Proximity is key. That's why the Swiss ecosystem, the Swiss watchmaking ecosystem is so strong and so efficient. Because we have in 10 minutes by car, everyone, literally everyone. So we can solve problems, accelerate, know better the people. From Le Locle, which was 80 square meters, we realized with the arrival of the Antarctic and the growth of the Antarctic that we needed to go to a larger facility. And also because the Antarctic was a step at all level. It was a step by showing, yes, the Czapek team is capable to conceive an in-house movement 100%, and yes, they are capable to produce it. Now, when we speak about production, this is assembly. Because all the components were made by our partners around. And that's fantastic. You meet people who have métiers that are incredible, that you didn't know about, and that you learn how to use it to improve your actual movement. But assembling all that really required a lot of space, more than the poor 80 square meters in which we are doing everything from logistics to management to watches. So we rented a place here in La Chaux-de-Fonds, and every 6 months we expanded the rental. The chance we had that the whole building was empty, and people were not queuing to rent it. So we could actually expand, so we rented 335 square meters, and then 460, 500 something, and now we are at 717 square meters. So it's a much larger facility that we will visit together later on. And in this manufacture, because now it's a whole manufacture, we start the in-house decoration this month. So it's going to be a milestone, and probably the last, I would say, step that was still missing into completing a full movement. Now we can do every step and every component of I would say, the normal components of a watch. I would say 80% of a watch. What are we not going to do? Because everybody can ask the questions. I would say the escapement, we work with Atocalpa, we'll make probably our own escapement with Atocalpa in the future. But we love the relationship and the people, and we work very well together. We're not going to try to replace them. The barrels also is a very specific component, and the dials. And these are, I would say, the three components that we will probably not try to do. The hands I should add also a very specific métier, and there is no reason to change that. For the rest, we find a different way to work.
What did you gain by integrating some of these capabilities here?
Alors, the decision to really go into a full manufacture where you produce in-house is based on one word, freedom. That's what we gained. If you do that for the money, I think you do that for the more wrong reason. Because it's a highly creative work. And if you are in the queue to get a prototype to be done, it's very complex. And you spend a lot of energy to trying to say to the guy, I just need 10, can you make me 10 prototype on the side? And no, if you can do that in-house,
more flexibility.
You've got this flexibility and you can adapt, and that's what you need. And you keep that independence also. Now, there is a benefit, which is that in the end, when you do everything right, you effectively make more money. And it's easy to lose money in watchmaking, I can tell you. It's we've been, very lucky, or we had a guardian angel behind us in the process, or we are very, maybe always checking and low-key and making sure we're not making mistakes, but it's very easy to go wrong. And then, now that we have these machines, we can produce prototyping. We're in the step of prototyping of the caliber 10 now. We just launched the caliber 9, the tourbillon, and we'll go into production after doing the prototyping of caliber 10, which will be for our anniversary watch in November this year. So we can actually accelerate the process of developing a movement, testing new ideas, and producing whenever we want in very small batches, so 50, for example. While if you do a production of a movement, you need to get to 300 to reach a first level of economics, because all these are CNC made at the beginning. Okay, it's a special work because it's micrometric. You hunt the microns, or you shepherd the microns to keep them together. And you need to have a precision of 2 to 3 microns on the components of a movement. So it's a very unique work, but it's a work where a lot of it is done by very fine-tuning, setting up, making the right choices in terms of cutting and machining and milling. But in the end, when the machine runs, it's how many you make. And you get a curve that says that after 300, you pass the tangential point. So that's where you don't gain much more by doing 1,000 or 10,000. 10,000, you will change the process, and then that will be industrial. Because this is not an industrial process. You use CNC machine to do an artisanal process in a better way. That's what it is. So when you do this 300 because you work with an external partner. When you do in-house, you don't have to. You have to work a lot at the beginning when you do the prototyping. Then, when your prototype is ready and you've done all the setting and you've tried and you made all the mistakes and you tried all the options, then you just need to reset up quickly and you can launch a series of 50 or 100. So you got that flexibility and you can better adapt to the market. So you see, there is a lot of benefits in creating a manufacture. But there is a lot of risk associated, and certainly without the rise of the Antarctic, we would not have been capable to do that.
Like we were mentioning before.
We were, because we were screwed. We were not receiving the components. People were screaming, "Where is my watch? Where is my watch?" And we're like, "We're sorry, we're always missing one component." We're still missing components, even though we still keep on having delay there and delay there.
Because and you just need one missing and you can't deliver the watch.
Exactly. You just need one to miss. And so now we are capable to do, I would say, 80% of a watch, which put us on the safe side and reduce the risks also. So it's you take a big risk, but then in the end, you reduce your overall risk.
Interesting. So overall, over the last 10 years, we're talking about risks and errors. Which one were kind of the biggest one? It can be anecdotes that you learned from and which really enabled the company to develop.
So the biggest mistake I made was actually in an interview. In a moment of Geneva Watch Days, we were crazy, we were so happy, everything was just incredible. And I thought, we're doing nearly 1,000 watches. How many could we do tomorrow 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. And I let myself imagining that. And that was wrong.
So you went a bit crazy.
Exactly. And you can see how easy it is to start thinking that you can do whatever you want. And no, the reality is that when you're a startup, you can be great. If you have no market, you will struggle and starve. Hopefully not to death. And it's suddenly you have a market. Then you can believe that you are fantastic, great, the best ever. No, you're just the same as before. You're making money now because the market is pushing. But when the tide is high, it's good for everyone. And that's it. And you don't decide on the tide. You're just a surfer. You got good waves. Enjoy them. And surf well. Yes, for sure. But you don't decide on the size of the wave.
Yeah.
And that's the learning, which is what are we made for? And in the very beginning of the first business plan, we said we want to do 999 watches. And I remember because some people were saying, yeah, bullshit, when you will get to the possibility to grow more, you will grow more.
Be tempted.
And be tempted to grow more. And that temptation is huge. And I fell into the trap.
It's a trap!
And then I realized, but this is not what we want to do. That's not our market. We are doing horlogerie watches, one by one, for each person. Each of the watches made above us is made by one watchmaker for one client. It's not batch production. It's a one-by-watch production, very well organized, so that we can actually be very efficient. But that's what the watchmaker calls. They're not very well organized person. They call to have an environment that is super good, well organized. And when you provide that, they are free horses. They just love to run in the prairie. So give them the chance to run. You don't time them. They don't need that. They're just gonna go the best they can and the right speed.
Yeah.
So that was a real learning.
Yeah.
To come back and say, are we losing our soul by growing too much? What should be the right size of a company? And then we found that making 1,000 watches per year was the right size of a company. Now,
well, I remember indeed when you said that, and the initial thought was, what is he saying? It's just like you're going in the crazy direction.
Because everybody pushes you.
Yeah,
there.
but I understand. You
don't realize. You don't realize what you're saying and what that means in the future.
Yeah, interesting.
And
Yeah. So 10 years. Beautiful development, I would say, in terms on an entrepreneurial point of view, in terms of products, in terms of indeed the facility that you have, the capacity that you have now. We are currently in a kind of strange context with not much visibility. And so how are you facing and coping with this situation? We adapt, as you mentioned, but concretely, how do you handle it?
Alors, you start again to have nights of little sleep. That's the starting point. So what really is relevant in the situation of today is uncertainty. And what is the difference between a normal company and a startup is the extreme uncertainty. When you are a startup, you deal with extreme uncertainty. And this crisis just brought us back to the early days of Czapek, when we were inside the mine, pushing the wagon or pushing the cart, inside the mine, and thinking there might be some light at the end. And that's exactly the spirit we brought back to the company when facing that crisis. We deal with uncertainty. Nobody knows what's coming. Last week, we hear that sellout is down, and then suddenly 4 clients go on Saturday to the shop, and you don't understand. It's just like a roller coaster. So we are still the surfers that we have always defined we were. we're still the hippies, maybe well-dressed, but hippies in the soul and in the mind that we were. And we just said, okay, we know that. We know how to deal with that. We're in the mind, so we stop spending on anything that is superfluous. We keep on doing what we know how to do, which is great watches without cutting corners.
Yeah.
Never. That's the rule. Really to remain true to this idea of the quest of beauty of Czapek, we have to continue it. Mm-hmm. And there is in Czapek in the 1850s a strong touch of modernity. We have to keep it. But this modernity is within a concept of classicism that we also have to keep, always having a mix of something very new and something to which people can refer, always respectful of tradition, but showing that with a traditional craft, like enameling or guilloche making, you can invent. It's just up to you, you know. It's your capacity to be creative that marks the next product and the next watch.
So 10 year marks some kind of maturity achievement. Now you know where you stand, where you want to go. Can you tell us a little bit about the future, maybe?
Yeah, so the future is to actually stay in 1,000 watches a year.
Yes,
it's very clear. And to explore complications in different directions. So we are going to expand some of the collections, the Quai des Bergues, the Antarctic. We're going to go one day into making a minute repeater, that's for sure. We have a few things to do before.
Yes.
Also, because if we want to do an incredible minute repeater, we have to learn. Keep on learning every day, keeps a smile on your face, you know. And this is a step-by-step process. We have now constructors working in the company. And so it's balanced between the capacity to produce and finish the components and the capacity to design them and to conceive them. Mm-hmm. So we are going to go into that evolution of the mix of the product by making new surprises every year. In terms of team, we're 29 and we will stay in that range. We might go to 35. I would like to set 39 as a maximum. Also because there is this proximity with the people.
Of course.
We have done an ESOP, which has been my most difficult project of the 10 years. Mm-hmm. So an ESOP is an employee share ownership plan. Mm-hmm. And I hope to have the chance one day to explain to people in the parliament why it is so difficult and why it should not be so difficult, because it's counterproductive to make it so difficult when you want to share with the people who create the value. Yeah. And the people who create the value are your colleagues. Yeah. They work with you, they sweat with you, they laugh with you, they cry with you. That's a family, you know, that's a way to work. So we've launched this ESOP last year, and all the employees which had a good evaluation and more than 1 year in the company could access. And so we've got the second batch of the most recent employees, the one who joined last year, who will get their shares by the end of this year. So that will also solidify the company in terms of having people who are staying with us for a long term. And it's not a prison, everybody's free, but the more free you are, the bigger smile on your face. And at the same time, if you work for you as much as you work for your colleagues, as much as you work for the watch collectors, as much for you work for your clients and partners, then it gives us a bigger sense of a bigger scope. It's a transcendental pleasure of thinking that your work goes beyond just the work.
And it's coherent with the inception
of the company. Absolutely.
Yeah. So today you have a bit more than 100 shareholders.
We are 226.
Okay. 226 shareholders.
Yeah, because there is a share sale every year after the General Assembly. So the next General Assembly will be taking place here in 1 month and a half from now. And And after the publication of the results of the audited account, and with the latest result of the company, we open a sort of a private stock exchange room where people can buy and sell their shares. So first, the shareholders who have a right of first refusal, and then second to external people. And that's how we actually get sometimes people who leave, and that's fine, it's a journey, so they can decide to leave. And it's great to have spent 5 years, 10 years together, and people who are recently joining. So all my kids have joined the company also this way, buying their own shares, and that's great.
So indeed, so quite a big number of shareholders. In terms of governance, how are you structured and how do you organize this? What are the kind of what does it imply? What responsibility do you have additional compared to maybe other companies?
So after my dad passed away, I had to manage the portfolio of the company of shares, and the decision to buy or not shares of a company have different, criteria. And after 20 years, what I noticed is that governance is the key criteria. And the best companies worldwide are the ones who have the best governance. They need to have a clear visionary leader, but they need to have in the back of that visionary leader an extremely well-organized governance and a well-organized company that has this transparency culture. So basically we applied that because that was also very much adapted to what we think. So I've always asked, even if I was the CEO co-founder, I've always pushed to have a very strong board that could be at the same time a counterweight, but also a support when the days are difficult, because I can promise you some days are difficult and you need the support, and also a source of idea or a source of this ping pong,
Yeah.
So
challenging ideas.
Last Sunday I was 1 hour on the phone with one of them who is a good friend, and we actually imagined the next 2-3 years of watchmaking and what trends are present today, which I will not tell you.
That was going to be my next question, of course.
You will discover them au fur et à mesure of the launch. But this is, you cannot do that alone, You don't get anywhere alone. You need this kind of ping pong or tennis game or to get to the next level. And the generation of idea is something that is very peculiar. You can get an idea when you get very relaxed, or when you shower, when you shave, when you take the bus, when you drive and drive on an highway and you don't concentrate too much, because your creative brain takes over. You need that creative brain to take over. But on a conversation with a person that you like a lot and with whom you have a very good interaction and knows well what the topic is, then you can also have a very creative way. Because you say something loud and you immediately think, no, that's stupid, that's not this, I didn't want you to say that. No, what I want to say is this. And then you get to the right idea. And so you need to prepare for these kind of creative moments where you have a sort of light that comes to you and tells you, this is what we have to do next. The Antarctic came thanks to this input of that friend in 2016. And it took us 3 years to mature it and launch it. And the next one will be a process that will be maybe not the same, but probably will take some of the element of the recipe that make it right. So governance is really key. It's difficult because, again, people prefer politics to transparency, so you have to deal with the human factor. You have to love the humans despite their weaknesses that you actually have yourself. So you start by liking yourself a bit. Be aware of yourself and your weaknesses. You will find them in so many of your fellow friends. And building it is probably the step that is the most complex in a company. Now, because we have 226 shareholders, we behave very closely to a public company in terms of communication, etc., which creates sometimes problems because you have the question of confidentiality that is always, dangerous. But we learn step by step how to deal with that. And the next step is probably to get the board to the next level.
So how do you select your board members?
So some of them are shareholders, 2 are coming from the smaller shareholders, and 2 are coming from the bigger shareholders.
Okay.
So shareholders who have more than 1% of the company are considered as bigger shareholders. There are about 15 on 225, so not even 10% of the company and of the shareholders. And the rest are smaller shareholders who will own 100 shares, 5 shares, 1,000 shares, depends, But we wanted to respect that representativity, to avoid that only the big boys have a say and not the smaller. That's also important, to always have a balance. Same thing, the CEO and the board, same thing at the level of the board, people who are larger shareholders, people who are smaller shareholders. And so we are now going to go into a step of pre-election of the shareholders who would become part of the real one representing the larger shareholders or part of the one representing the smaller shareholders. And then we will have one independent board member. Now, to get an independent board member that is good is tricky. Because there is a specific word for that, conflicted.
Yeah.
If you want someone who knows about watchmaking, he's going to work with all your confrères, all your competitors or all the other brands that are around. And they will get to a level of confidentiality that is huge. Where is the limit? How can you deal with that? And so I have one person in mind, and she in the past was too conflicted. She said to me, I cannot. I work with who, and it cannot be, I cannot tell them I'm a board member of Czapek. But now she just finished her mandate as CEO, so she probably might be free, and we'll see if she accepts, and if the board accepts her as candidate, and that would be probably another element, another spice in the recipe for the next 10 years of success.
Okay. Let's take a very concrete example, okay? You want to develop a new collection, let's say, okay? What are the processes to follow you on an idea like this?
So the process is always very structured. If you want to be creative, you need to have a structure to know where you move. The briefing is the key part. But the briefing the briefing has to be precise, but too precise kills the briefing. Because you need to have the designer to feel free to design. So you need a space where specific you say, and then whatever, so that he feels like, he can go outside what you've defined in your brief, in case he has an idea. And he usually has an idea. The higher the level of your brief, the higher the level of the design. Yeah. And it's going to be bringing up. And then I integrate construction very fast. And then there is a game between the designer and the constructor and myself. And there is a question of arbitrage coming from me. And there is a question of also making them work together. And then that's why I brought in a 4th person that is key, which is Nicolas Birbaum, our head of manufacture, who is the one who sometimes comes with the solution to make that the construction works and respect the design. When the 2 guys are fighting, and I'm like, shit, I'm going to be Solomon having to cut the baby in 2. That doesn't work, So now we are in a group of 4, having this balance between the approaches. And then there is no point about staying relaxed and staying cool and playing in known lands. We have to explore new directions. So we push to the maximum. And we let people run, give them the freedom. There is a timeline and there is no timeline. in the sense we would never launch something that is not ready. It can have a technical issue that we can resolve quickly, and the prototype is not functional, but that's not a problem. If something we don't feel it's ready, we would launch it. We wouldn't launch it. We would wait until it's perfect. And this is the step that is, I think, missing sometimes when I look around. This willingness to say, no, we can do better. We have to rework that. It's not perfect. And this is, by raising the bar continuously, this is where you go to that level. So we have in-house designer, in-house product manager, and it's the product manager who makes the briefing with me.
Okay.
So we are interacting, and then he launches the baby and follows it from further away, letting the designer and the constructor start their ping-pong game.
Yeah. But coming back to this notion of governance, I mean, coming with the new collection is an investment. There's obviously a business risk associated with that. So the final go-ahead of saying, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Who takes that decision?
Every investment that would be above 100,000 is to be discussed with the board. I set that limit myself.
Okay.
I create my own limit.
To limit yourself.
Yeah, because
I wanted to imply people.
I want to create a system where I can disappear because I might pass away one day, and the things are already clearly set.
Okay.
And 500,000 would be actually absolutely voted by unanimity of the board.
Okay.
That's really key now.
Okay.
In the past, when we were working with a partner like Renaud, like Vaucher, or like MHM, like Lederer, we would engage a lot of money. 1 million, 2 million. That's the range of money you have to engage when you develop a new movement and make the production of that movement done by a partner, at least in terms of kit. Maybe you do the assembly, but producing all the components to finished level, that means a lot of money. And that's a huge risk for the company. This is where your risk is. And this is what you reduce by having an in-house production and by making your own movement. So you increase your risk because now you don't rely on someone who's done it 10 times, 20 times, 100 times. You do it by yourself, so you're going to make mistakes, for sure. There's no question about that. You will make mistakes, but you will correct them quickly. It's like, when you're on the boat, the boat never goes right, goes straight. You always correct the direction. This is what you have to do as a CEO of the company. And by being capable to address this question of governance, you also make sure that everybody understands what is at stake. And is this project key for the company? Is this project entering the strategy of the company or not? So you need that. If you don't do that, then they are just guests in a party. Yeah. That's not what you want. You want people who feel like, okay, I actually voted and agreed on that.
So. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Well, Xavier, thank you very much for this extremely interesting discussion and the transparency that came along.
Thanks a lot.
And the best of luck, obviously, for the next 10 or 100 years, or even more. Who knows?
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so
Bye,
much.
Watch lovers.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Watches TV. Thanks for the incredible interview. That was a beautiful one.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.